Last year I was completely dead after the tour, and now it's a lot better.
So you're teasing for La Vuelta already?
Well, I mean, first I will take an easy week, but then I'm looking forward to it as well. Yeah.
Jonas Vingegaard missed out on the 2025 Tour de France yellow jersey, and he hasn't won a Grand Tour since 2023. But 2025 isn't over yet, because now he's got one more shot at Grand Tour redemption, as he's confirmed his plans to ride in Spain in August, and the Vuelta España might just save his year. So let's break it down. So first, we have to take a look at 2025 so far. And if we're honest, it's not been the best season for Jonas and Visma Lease bike. During his Tour de France preparation, riding in Paris-Nice, whilst wearing the yellow jersey and leading the race, Jonas crashed off camera. And we saw him later on with a cut lip, some injuries to his hands, indicating that he'd gone down, but most notably, he mentioned after the fact that he'd hurt his head and he'd suffered from a concussion. He even called out the race concussion protocol, saying nobody had checked on him. And that meant that he ended up abandoning that race, not completing it, and his preparation and training for July's tour took a bit of a hit. So certainly that wasn't the way that Jonas really wanted to start the season. And following on from that, we had June's Criterium du Dauphiné, which is used as a testing ground for the main Tour de France GC contenders, seeing as the race is only 3 weeks later. And despite early indications from that one being quite good, as Jonas managed to make some time on Tadej in the time trial, it quickly became apparent that Pogačar was a step or two ahead of both Jonas and Remco. And that didn't bode well for July's tour. And whilst Jonas put up a great fight, especially in the first week, trying to follow Tadej, doing really well in some sprint finishes, surprisingly, the tour as a spectacle and as a competition was effectively over by the end of stage 13's hilly time trial, as Jonas ceded 30 seconds to Tadej there, as well as over 2 minutes on the Hortocamp stage the day before on stage 12 at the first mountaintop finish, showing that the form from the Dauphiné was no fluke, and that with both guys 100% healthy for the first time in a few years in their preparation leading up to the tour, there could be no illusions from Jonas or anybody else that he's simply the second best rider in the world right now. And of course, it's worth noting that second place in the Tour de France is a brilliant result that most riders would see as the crown palmares of their career. But that being said, Jonas is a former two-time consecutive winner of the Tour de France in 2022 and 2023. And there's no way he turned up this year to try and get second place. He came to win, and he will consider this as a failure of his primary objective from this year. But as some of you will be aware from a few of my earlier videos, it isn't just on the bike woes that have followed Jonas and Team Visma around this season and during the tour. His wife, Trina Vingegaard, gave a couple of really badly timed interviews that were recorded just before the tour, but actually released in the first couple of stages. And she brought up a number of interesting topics that included criticising the Visma team tactics, saying that Jonas's teammates should be all in for him, and that Visma were squeezing Jonas too much now, and essentially implying that the end of his career was on a countdown after the birth of his first children. So safe to say that caused a lot of drama and distraction for Visma. And Team DS Christian Niemann was noticeably annoyed and frustrated that it seemed to be impacting the focus and preparation on the tour when he was being asked about it in interviews pre and post stage. And it may or may not have been a coincidence that Jonas had, in his own words, his 2 worst ever days at the tour whilst all this was going on. However, it certainly compounded the issues that he was having on the bike and meant a usually fiercely private individual like Jonas was forced to discuss his personal and private lives in the media whilst trying to perform in the hardest sporting event in the world. And whether they admit it or not, there definitely was some tension between the team and Jonas. I've certainly never heard Team DS Christian Niemann criticising Jonas ever before, and he did it at least twice that I saw this tour. So it's hard to argue that this has been the best year Jonas and Visma could have hoped for. That being said, the season isn't over yet, and considering that his form improved in the third week, and he was a lot closer to Tadej's level in terms of the time gaps, and now that he's confirmed that he will be riding the Vuelta, he'll be aiming to carry that form over from the end of the tour into the start of the Vuelta and use that momentum to pick up the win. And that's why the Vuelta is so important. It's a chance for redemption and a comeback Grand Tour win for Jonas. Like we say, clearly the second best rider in the world, but he hasn't won a Grand Tour since 2023. That's over 2 years. And for a rider at the peak of his career at the age of 28, that will feel like an incredibly long time for Jonas and Visma. It confirms Jonas's resilience after 2 incredibly hard editions of the Tour de France, whilst also giving him the chance to add to his missing palmares. Yes, we know he probably would have won the Vuelta in 2023 if he didn't gift it to teammate Sepp Kuss. Even then, he's still missing that jewel from his crown as a GC contender. And if he can't win the Tour de France against the best rider possibly in history, winning another Grand Tour like the Vuelta or the Giro is without doubt the second best option for him, and would no doubt help him regain some confidence and let us see the Jonas of old that we haven't really seen in the last couple of years during the Tour. Rather than being the nail, this time he's certainly going to be the hammer. And most importantly, that confidence, that boost and that momentum could set him up brilliantly for the World Championships at the end of the year, and even more importantly, heading into the 2026 season, where he will no doubt aim to do battle with Tadej again at the Tour, and even possibly then has the option of taking on the Giro as well, to do the Vuelta Giro double, which in itself would be an incredibly impressive, elusive and enviable achievement. But it won't be easy if he wants to take the victory and that red jersey all the way back to Denmark, because as we can see from some of the other rumoured and confirmed contenders for the Vuelta, there will be some stiff competition from the likes of UAE's will they, won't they, co-leader, teammate, rival situation that's waiting to play out between João Almeida and Juan Ayuso, alongside the likes of former Vuelta winner Remco Evenepoel and former Tour de France and Giro winner Egan Bernal. And that really opens up a lot of different options in terms of the tactics and approaches that teams will take in this race. And even though it is disappointing for us as fans that Tadej Pogacar will not be there, I honestly feel like this could be the most exciting Grand Tour of the year so far. I'm super hyped for the idea of UAE versus Jonas versus themselves versus Remco. And it really is super unpredictable. We could see UAE doing the 1-2 attacks on Jonas with João and Ayuso, try and put him under pressure, and that would certainly be an effective tactic. But equally likely is that they hate each other, don't work for each other, and end up imploding as a team, gifting Jonas the advantage. And of course, if Remco's there, he's recovered and he's back to form, he's going to be no pushover either. And it means that we're likely to see Jonas have to be aggressive, have to attack, and try and take the race to these guys, which should make a super exciting race for us as fans. But if he wants to win it, he's going to have to fight for it. It certainly won't be easy. But if he can do it, it will be absolutely huge for both Jonas and Visma. It will reframe his 2025 season as a success, not a disappointment, help him fill out his missing palmares, restore morale at Jumbo-Visma, showcase Jonas's ability, his level, his performance, and the fact that he's still in his prime at only the age of 28. But most importantly, it sets up a huge rematch and battle with Tadej Pogacar at the World Championships at the end of the year and in 2026's Tour and beyond. And especially after a difficult year for Jonas, maybe this one will buy him some goodwill with Trina at home if he comes home with the victory. That being said, I don't know how she's going to feel about him being away in Spain for another 3 weeks. That kitchen isn't going to build itself. So what do you think is going to happen for this one? Is he going to ride aggressively and aim for the win, or is he going to ride it controlled and try and see what happens? Will the Visma team be good enough to compete with the two-pronged attack from UAE? Make your prediction below. Do you think he wins, or will it be one of the other contenders? I certainly think he's the clear favourite, but like I say, it really won't be easy with what he's up against. So Jonas Vingegaard's season is far from over. If he wins La Vuelta, he doesn't just salvage it, he elevates it. So what do you think? Is this his moment, or will UAE strike once again? Make sure you drop a like, comment, most importantly subscribe. It's free and it really helps the channel, and catch you on the next one.